If you're bored of the flagship market and want something a little different, there's one premium top-tier phone I think is worth giving a go. It's called the Honor Magic 6 Pro. I'm called Cam Bunton, and this is my review. Looking at the Magic 6 Pro, there's this contradiction in that it's a very individual and unique phone from the back, but reminds me of Huawei's hardware design on the front. Looking at it head-on, I could be looking at a Mate series or P series phone. That slim pill-shaped cutout for the cameras and facial recognition hardware in the top of the display and those curves around the edges and corners are very reminiscent of Huawei's design language. That's no bad thing though. In an era of phones all looking very samey from the front, it's nice to have something a little different, and those curves make it comfortable to hold and swipe on. Even the gentle curves on the bottom of the screen are a useful addition, because it makes swiping upwards on the display more fluid and convenient somehow. Like my thumb just glides effortlessly when swiping to go home or launching the recent apps view. Now in fact, despite being quite a big phone, the one-handed comfort is better than you might assume it would be from a phone that's about the same size as a Galaxy S24 Ultra or the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Granted, it's not nimble or compact, but its curves aid its comfort. From the back, it looks like an evolution of the previous generation Honor flagship, which is exactly what this is. The camera bump is eye-catching to say the least, featuring shiny angled polished chamfers designed to mimic jewellery. As different and unusual as it is, there's a pleasing sense of symmetry about it too, and actually I quite like having the cameras placed centrally, and not just because of that symmetrical look. You place it down on its back and it won't rock for starters, and second, it gives me somewhere obvious to rest my fingers when shooting photos and video without them getting in the way or having to think about avoiding covering the lenses. Now, I'm not a big fan of the fake leather green finish, but this frosted dark grey or black model I've been testing is really attractive. Now, it's not just about looks, of course, it's built to last too, with a glass covering over the display which Honor claims has been stress tested against drops onto many different surfaces and is super resilient and impact resistant. It's also IP68 water and dust resistant, so whatever you throw at it, it should be just fine, providing you don't go over the top and throw it in a cement mixer. It's clear then that when it comes to physical looks, the Magic 6 Pro is pretty unique. But if you dive into the software, you start to see some pretty clear areas where it's been inspired by others, and I'm thinking mostly of iOS 17 on the iPhone here. The lock screen customization feature is pretty similar to the lock screen customization on iPhone, as is the standby mode that kicks in when you place the phone horizontally on the stand. You can have a clock widget or a photo gallery view, just like you can in standby on iOS 17. It's not identical, but it is very, very similar. Otherwise, it's pretty much what you'd expect from Honor. The interface is clean, you get useful features like enlarged folders on your home screen, and there are also a few AI-powered features because it's 2024 and everything needs AI in it now. One of those is a feature in the photo gallery that can create a video highlight reel for you from a collection of photos. Now, Honor's latest flagship phone display is bright, and I mean really bright. With HDR peaks that can hit as high as 5000 nits, it's among the brightest screens ever put on a phone. Those peaks are generally only hit in HDR content when you see little bright spots in the screen, but it still means that generally when the phone screen is cranked up to full brightness, it's too bright. I found that with this display, similar to the OnePlus 12 panel, at full brightness you sometimes lose some of the richness of the colour, especially lighter colours and brighter parts of any images or movie scene. But the good news is the automatic dimming is really good. It can adjust really quickly and at very granular levels, and indoors is barely over 30% brightness. That gives a lot of scope to crank it up, and means it's not using tons of battery power to stay on. Otherwise, it's a great panel. I really like the default tuning of the Honor display colours too. It's got vibrant colours without being unnaturally oversaturated, and it doesn't crank the contrast up too high either, so skin, faces and nature scenes keep a natural look to them. It's also crisp and detailed with smoothly rendered text, and has adaptive refresh rates that change up and down based on how fast the content on the display is moving, which helps save battery on slower content like reading, but boosts it to keep animations smooth and sharp in fast-moving gameplay. Which leads us nicely onto the performance of the phone, which, unsurprisingly given the chipset inside, is very good. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which powers the Honor Magic 6 Pro, is the flagship processor platform you'll find inside nearly all of the top Android phones in 2024. It's really fast, it's smart, and it's efficient. Playing the most demanding games, whether it be Genshin Impact or Call of Duty, wasn't any trouble. It maintains high refresh rates and smooth gameplay for 20 to 30 minutes without really struggling. So if you're more of a casual gamer than a serious gamer where maintaining peak refresh rates for longer period matters, the Honor will be more than good enough. Now, usually when there's a phone with the really quick charging support, you get the proprietary charger in the box. Not with this phone. The manufacturers hopped on the trend of reducing waste by not including it, so if you want those tasty 80-watt speeds it can handle, you're going to have to fork out for it separately. If you do, you'll get a full charge from empty in about 40 minutes. Battery life is really strong though, so time spent actually plugged into charge or on a wireless charging base is actually minimal. Like the OnePlus 12, I found with my own moderate to light usage I could get 2 days from a full charge. This is with about 3 hours of screen time per day, usually split between YouTube, Threads, Instagram, web browsing, and some casual gaming and camera usage. If you're a really heavy user, a full day is not going to be a problem. Now, as is pretty much standard for any large premium phone now, the Magic 6 Pro has a primary, ultra-wide, and a zoom camera. The zoom offers 2.5 times optical zoom, but can go further thanks to the use of a really pixel-dense sensor. In fact, it can go as far as 100 times, but given my experience with it, I can't imagine you wanting to do that. Push the zoom any further than about 5 or 10 times and it ends up with images looking more like a painting than a photograph. Details are smoothed out or generated by the image processor rather than being an authentic take on what is actually in the scene. Still, keeping it at the lower end of the zoom scale, around 2.5 or 5 times, the camera copes well with shadows, highlights and colour, controlling those better than the Samsung S24 Ultra in most situations. But the smoothing was an effect I saw in a few different modes, particularly when using the ultra-wide camera. Using that, I often found that details and textures in photos were smoothed out to create quite a weird artificial look, particularly in lower light situations like when using the dedicated night mode once the sun had set. The end result looks like the sensor has picked up the scene, recognised colours and patterns, and coloured in the bits it can't figure out, rather than showing the real, natural textures like rocks in walls, and the little shadows that play off those grains. Like I said, it was mostly the ultra-wide camera that struggles with this effect, and for those shots in daylight it might be something you don't really notice when looking at a small photo on your phone screen, but put it in a larger monitor or zoom in and you will see it. Now the primary camera is without doubt the strongest of the three. Its variable aperture kicking in when necessary, and the lens able to produce close-up images with a nice natural background blur to them. That's much better than using a processor-powered portrait mode. Images in general tend to have quite a saturated, warm look to them, but the Honor does a great job with highlights and shadows in contrasting conditions. Highlights are tamed so that detail, colour and textures are retained, and there's some detail in the shadows too. Now blue skies look really blue sometimes, and the warm tones do make reds or anything close to red or warm look a bit too red. Video shows similar characteristics, but it's also strong. Might not hit the peaks of resolution and frame rate you get in a Samsung phone, but with 4K up to 60 frames per second it is again more than good enough. Especially since most phones that push higher end up losing image quality for the sake of those high frame rates or pixel counts. The primary camera is also really good in low light situations. Using it at night time with the dedicated night mode, I was surprised how much light it could capture with just a second or two of exposure, showing stars clearly in the sky without any motion blur. It's pretty impressive and was better than Samsung's flagship phone in this regard. Now in the end, using Honor's phone is very different to using a lot of other Android devices, and that alone is a great reason for it to exist, and for you to give it a go if you're bored. The shape and design is one element of that. Magic OS doesn't feel like standard Android, acting like a weird mix between Android and iOS, but not necessarily in a bad way. But as well as this unique experience, you're getting a strong triple camera system in a powerful phone with great battery life and a stunningly bright display. Is it perfect? No, but it's a fantastic change from the norm, and one that, while expensive, isn't as pricey as the S24 Ultras and iPhone 15 Pro Maxes of the world. Let me know what you think of this phone in the comments down below, or you can get me on Threads. I'm @CamBunton. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap that notification bell, and then you won't miss any more. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.